with your host, Diva with Depression.
Welcome to Breaking the Mask of Depression with me, your hostess, the Diva with Depression. Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. If you saw my social media platforms, you know that I have been sick for a while, probably over a month now, after I came back from a trip. And so I had no voice for a while, so I couldn't record. I mean, I did want to take like maybe a week break, but it ended up going a little longer. So, but now I'm here and I'm happy to be here with you guys again. I want to tell you guys something about being sick. I don't know what kind of bug it is, but so many people are sick right now. And I just saw a post on social media that said that it's some kind of new strain of COVID. I don't know what that means. I know that I tested negative, but I've still been sick, 2 rounds of antibiotics, and I still have to go back. So make sure that you're taking care of yourselves. If you have to go back to wearing a mask, wear a mask, but don't take this seriously. Please take it seriously because I don't think I've been this sick as far as a cold or a flu or anything in a while. So take care of yourself. We need you. My voice is still not back to normal, and I'm on the end of something, I don't know, but I don't want you guys to go through what I'm going through. So please be sick and please forgive me if my voice goes in and out. And you know, the clown committee over at the crack house, they won't tell you if it's another pandemic. So it's up to us to share what's going on and protect ourselves. So today I want to talk about something that I have touched on since the beginning, but I don't think I've ever had a full episode on grief. And I've had a lot of death in the past year, a lot of deaths. And the reason why I was in New York this last time is because one of my brothers from another mother passed away unexpectedly. And so after that, I realized that maybe I need to talk about it a little bit because people don't really know what to talk about when it comes to grief. And then last month, lost 2 more family members. And then last week, another family member. And last year started, you guys have heard me talk about my sister Michelle. Well, one of her sisters passed away last year, and it was her younger brother that passed away this year. And their family, I mean, we've been family friends for over 40 years. And so I trying to like listening to her and then talking to other people, I got curious. You know, I wanted people to maybe share what they're going through. What was their first, realization that grief was getting bad or healing. And so I'm going to do a series. And so today I pretty much will just go over what grief is, the different types of grief, give you some feedback on how I handle it, which is not good. But I just felt like it was ready. It was time, it was time for me to have this discussion, and hopefully it helps everybody, especially my family and friends that may not have anyone to talk to or may be ashamed to talk or afraid, don't want to burden people. But that's not possible. If they love you, they'll listen. So, grief. I have lost people over the years. I don't think that I've had someone so close to me and so much a part of me pass away until my grandfather passed. And that was my other heart. Like you guys have heard me talk about him many times. If there is one man that I loved unconditionally forever and ever is my grandpa. And yes, we knew it was coming. I was able to tell him I love him and tell him that I'm going to miss him and hear him say that he loved me. But that didn't matter. It was a tough loss. And ever since then, that actually triggered my spiral. When I came home from the funeral, came back from Virginia, and I just couldn't function properly. My oldest was 2.5. And, one of the stories that I tell is that when I came back, my ex had his daughter there at the house, and she was younger. And I think that they were getting ready to go out, and I dressed her, but then she had to go to the bathroom, and she didn't make it. And so there was this puddle on the floor, and it turned out that I didn't even put her undergarments on, because my mind was so bad. And so I think that started my grief journey, and it's not a pretty one. You know, your heart is broken, completely broken, and there's nothing that anyone can say that will make you feel better. There's nothing that you can necessarily do to make it better other than get through it. That's another emotion and another event that we have to just go through it to get through it, like they say. And um, yeah, you have to go through it. And so all of the death that I've been hearing, it's been heartbreaking, including celebrities, public figures, some of our celebrities and the people that we grew up with, Malcolm Jamal Warner, Biz Markie, Howie T. Like this is part of my childhood. And so when these people are leaving us, that's a part of you. You know what I'm saying? Because they represent some of these things, a lot of these things. I won't say all of them, but a lot of these things represent happy periods in our life. And so we have to, grow up then. And so it bothers me sometimes that my childhood is slowly drifting away, and I need to hold on to them considering my fucked up childhood. you know, I need to hold on to the happy moments that make up my childhood. And so that was some legal fact. So what is grief? Grief is a strong emotion that people experience when they lose someone or something that was close to them. It's a natural reaction, but it can affect us all differently. And that's the thing. I can be, strong and, you know, push through it and continue. And then the next person could just not be able to handle it, especially if it's someone that's really, really close to you. It's hard to maintain. And so, you know, it's so different in everybody. One thing that I will say, and which I'll talk about another time, is that grief just doesn't relate to death. Grief relates to something that you are mourning the loss of, and person, place, thing. So remember that, you know, and some of the cause, oh my gosh, guys, excuse me. Some of the common feelings experienced are sadness, anger, shock, loneliness, um, blaming yourself because, maybe you feel like you contributed to it, blaming yourself because you did not get to the person, you did not get to tell the person how you felt, or spend more time with the person. And that's me with my sister. We protected each other so much that I never told her when my depression was really bad, and she didn't tell me when her sickness was getting bad. And it just so happens that I could not make it to her before she left. And that stays with me for the rest of my life, because I wanted to be with her, and I know that she knew that I loved her, immensely, I know that she knew that my baby loved her immensely, but I just feel like I didn't get a chance to tell her that last time. And although it wasn't something that I was in control of, I feel bad because I didn't do more to get there to her. And so, you start to think about these things: denial, anger, I've been angry at God for a while, and I just had this conversation when I went to my brother's funeral. Um, what is the problem? You know, like I know that it's not God's fault, but why are you taking so many of the good people from us? If you love me as your child, why are you snatching these people from my life? You know, and so that's something that's a common reaction. Especially when it comes to I've heard children losing their parent, and a lot of them start to believe that it's God's fault. And if you love me, why did you take it from me? And especially children, younger children, they might not understand. And so in their mind, somebody took their parents away. And so, all of us are going to experience it differently. And we just have to find healthy ways to get through it. I don't know the healthy way, which is why I decided to have this series, because I did not deal with it in a healthy way. I My depression got worse. This was the first time that I thought about leaving by my hands, and it was just, yeah. It was a rough time for me, and so I had to be hospitalized. I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. I had to be hospitalized because, along with the grief, came with other life events, and I just couldn't deal with it. I never thought that I would be without that person, and so it was just too much. And so the one thing that I'm grateful for is that I knew enough to check myself in. And that's what I did. And it started the summer of hospital visits, because they really were afraid that I was going to move on. So, those are the things that you have to share with people. I've been telling people that I'm close to recently, that have recently experienced that, to maybe, reach out to professionals, or reach out. Don't be quiet, you know, let your friends know, let your family know. And if you don't want your whole family to know, just find somebody that you are comfortable with, and talk or not talk, because sometimes you don't want to talk. You just want somebody to know that somebody's there, and or text, you know, and because if you stay silent, then it'll build up, and there's no release, and that's what makes it bad. So try to do that. Like I said before, there are different types of losses, and there are also different types of grief. And so there's normal grief, which is just, the feelings that accompany the trauma of losing someone. And I want to say, but from what I'm reading, normal grief is just this. I think there's the 5 or 7 stages of grief, and you complete that path, and you pass go, which is bullshit. But that's what normal grief is called. Complicated grief is grief that just worsens as time goes on. Traumatic grief, the grief that you feel after the sudden or unexpected loss of a loved one, and that's where I was at last month. That's where my sister and her family was at last month, and they're still there, because losing a sibling, that's major, so there's no right way. But I'm going to read you a couple more. Cumulative grief, when a current loss may dredge up feelings of a loss you have suffered in the past. Exaggerated grief, start out as a normal grief, but grow with intensity as time passes. Here's a big one, and a major reason why we need to talk. Mass grief. When experienced, you may not even be aware that symptoms such as anger or impulsive behavior are related to grief. And we don't, it's the same thing with mental illness. People don't know the signs or symptoms are. And so we just pack it in and we keep moving. And that is not healthy. So the mask grief is dangerous. Abbreviated grief was short lived but bona fide grief. There's no period. Like I said, there's the stages that whoever came up with, that's bullshit. But the stages are your personal stages. Delayed grief, when your grief may be postponed for a matter of weeks, months, and sometimes years. And sick grief, which all of us can experience. But I see this in men a lot. Absent grief. They just don't show any signs of grieving because they want to be strong. They want to appear as strong. They want to make sure everybody around them knows that they're strong. And so the delayed and the absent can be major. The prolonged grief, that doesn't make sense to me because if you lose something, you lose it forever. So there's no such thing as prolonged grief because grief is going to be lifelong because you lost that person, place, or thing. And so that's why I laugh when I read stuff sometimes because, who came up with this shit? Like who told you that I lost half of my heart, but I can only grieve for a certain amount of time? You know? So, it just drives me crazy sometimes. But it's the same thing with the DSM-5, the checklist that you have to check in, that you have to do every time you go to the psychiatrist or make an appointment for this and make an appointment for that. How many times are you going to ask me if I'm feeling low, if I'm functioning properly? Like, I wouldn't fucking be here, if I answered all of these questions positively. And so that's why you hear me guys talk about I don't talk about certain things because I just think that it's dangerous and it causes more trauma sometimes than helping. And that checklist to me hurts more. And that's just my personal opinion, my absolutely personal opinion. But this types of grief list, I like to tell you, I like to give credit where credit is due. And I'm going to share it on my Instagram page, but it's usarsonline.com. And I will share it because I thought that this is an amazing list to see. And then it'll help you understand maybe what you're going through. And so even though that there are different types of losses, I'm going to stick to the people side today because it's heavy on my heart. Right? So many people are leaving my life, have left my life. And even though, I have this discussion with people all the time, friends and family, that our elders, we know that they're in their 80s. We know that they're in their 90s. We know that they're approaching their, sunset, but it doesn't make it any easier. And I have major anxiety over losing some of these people and the things that I know are coming with other people. And so it's tough for me. It's tough, but we're going to stick to people today. I talk about my grandfather. My grandfather passed in 1985. My daddy passed in 1998. My granny died in 2003. My sister died in 2018. And I'm telling you those dates because I want you to see how much time passes and how it just never goes away. My grandfather died in 1985. And there are days when all you have to do is say his name or say grandpa, and I will start crying. My daddy, 1998, till this day, my brothers and I talk about him, and it always gets kind of emotional for us. My granny is the same way. Every time I bake a cake or make some biscuits or something, because she's one of the people that taught me how to cook. And every time I do something, crochet, see people crochet. And as a matter of fact, sidebar, I have been buying crochet blankets. I just happened to be thrifting with my youngest who was here for the summer. And every time I went in a thrift store so far, they're having crochet blankets there. And so I've been buying them because it reminds me so much of my childhood. So 2018, like I said, we're in 2025 now. And I'm actually living where my sister lived when she passed away. And so that makes it tougher. The other day I was out with my daughter and my other sister, and I just started crying, and it's because my oldest daughter is getting married next year. And she's marrying my sister's nephew. And I call my sister's neck is Nettie, and I'm Celie. And ever since she met me and met my oldest daughter, she was determined to make sure that my oldest daughter married her nephew. And they are, in fact, getting married next year. And so I've been crying ever since the engagement, you know, and I'm so excited for them. But I'm also sad because she won't be there physically. And so those are the things that you have to remember is that I told you that I might cry. Those are the things that you have to remember that there's no time limit, you know, and there's no rhyme or reason. You can smell a smell. I was in the store one day and this older woman walked by me and she smelled just like the perfume that my granny used to wear when we went to church. Isn't that something? And I wanted to hug the lady. I just told her, I told her hello and I love the way she smelled. And yeah, it's crazy. So when the peanut gallery tells you, get over it, you know, it's been 10 years, it's been 20 years, tell them to shut the fuck up. That's all I'm going to say. Tell them to shut the fuck up because they don't know anything. There's no rhyme or reason. We'll get back to the peanut gallery and some of the things that they say. But some people are so fucking insensitive that it just drives me up a fucking wall. Grief can also show up physically. And yeah, because mental illness is a physical and mental, a physical and mental disease. So you can't deny how some of our emotions show up in our body, but it does. No, it really, really does. And I don't think that we pay attention to the physical side, and we don't pay attention to what is what our emotions are putting into our body, if that's the right way to say it. And so, if you have, nausea or stomach pain, it could be because you don't feel like eating, after you lost someone, and you just, your stomach is in knot, or it feels unsettled all the time. Headaches is a major one because you're crying, and crying always, can lead up to a headache. I know that's me, if I'm crying for a long amount of time. Blood pressure, noise sensitivity, sleeping. You could either lose sleep or sleep too much, eating too little, eating too much. And those are things that, of course, can happen in any situation, but people will ignore it when it comes to grieving. And that's something that we can't ignore. Another major one is like your chest and your breathing, getting a tightness in your chest, shortness of breath, shallow breathing. That's a major one. And some of these things happen immediately, after you lose your person. And then sometimes it just builds up, you know? And so we have to pay attention to these things. And when I say pay attention to these things, I'm telling you that I'm giving you all of this information now. And if you know that someone is going through it, or if you personally are going through it, then read this information and then you'll know what to do and how to handle it. I will give you an example. After my sister passed, like I said, I went inpatient. And the first day that I saw the therapist on staff, the psychiatrist on staff, they had me down as suicidal and empty nest syndrome. And I'm like, what do you mean? Empty nest means, they leave the house and I have a party. And when I went into the group, um, they said that, empty nest is a thing, especially if that's been your identity. And that is me. Everybody will tell you that once I had kids, that's it. My whole world, my whole identity, you know? And it could be because I had a problem with my identity beforehand, but it's also that is the greatest role that I have played in my life so far. And so everything happened to me. I don't know if I told you guys this, but 2018, my sister passed away. My oldest moved out of town and out of state, and my youngest went to college. Even the dog went, my granddog, went with my oldest. That's her dog. And so they, they were explaining the empty nest syndrome. And then the next day, when you're inpatient, most of the hospitals will make you go to 1 or 2 group sessions a day, and which sucks because if you're inpatient, you just want to just lay down and not talk to people. And so maybe around the third day that I was there, they came to get me, to take me to a grief support group. And so I'm like, what? They have that? Because guys, I didn't know. And when I got to the group, there are a few other people that, one guy had just lost his mom, another one a grandparent. And she had me listed as losing my sister and losing my children being present and my physically present. The emptiness syndrome was combining with the grief of losing my person. And that's combined with my already fragile state of mind and fragile mental health. But all of that, contributed to the breakdown. And so, yeah, handling it is hard, but we've got to find ways to handle it so we don't lose other people. So, just pay attention. Please just pay attention. One thing that I learned, a new thing, while I was, researching and writing up this episode for you guys, is there's a difference between grief and grieving. Did you know that? Grief and grieving. And I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. Grief is the natural response to loss. Grieving is the process of coming to terms with the loss. Did you see that? Grief, the response to the loss. Grieving, the process of acceptance. And I'll go through the list a little bit. So grief can be triggered by death, the end of a relationship, moving away, a diagnosis, leaving a job, or some other big change. Right? That's what I was telling you earlier. Grieving is crying in the arms of a loved one, drawing a picture of the person we miss, making a special food, or going for a long walk to think. That is the process of us trying to come to terms and handling the grief part. The collection of emotions that come with the loss, sorrow, anger, nostalgia, jealousy, that's grief. Grieving is the process of exploring your feeling and adjusting to life without the person or thing that you've lost. And in my, for me personally, the process is the hardest part for me because I can't come to terms with life without the person. And I know that that sounds crazy, but that's just it. And there are going to be times when you have lost your person or your thing, and you could be in the middle of the biggest party of your life, and all of a sudden you break down crying because that person's not there, or you're not actively involved in some way because you lost something or someone, and that's major. And there's no right or way. And this is the last thing on the list. I swear to God is on the list. For grief, there is no right or wrong way to feel grief. And for grieving, there is no right or wrong way to grieve. So the peanut gallery that I told you about, shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up. Let people do what they got to do. You can't cure grief. You can't cure grieving. Let people do what they got to do because you don't know what they're feeling. And that goes for everything. Some people, I know I've heard this before, that if you see my brothers um, don't have a mental illness. They work, they have a normal life, and they handle everything with strength. And here I am, the mental patients, the taking the medicine, the one that just can't deal with anything. And we grew up in the same house. And so people look at that, and it's like, well, if they're doing such and such, why aren't you doing such and such? Because you grew up in the same house. And even though you grew up in the same house with people, your reactions and your experiences are different. And that's not just growing up, that's period. Everybody has their own individual way of handling something and accepting something and going through something, So, just think about it. Just think about it. Because it's a lot. And I'm going to keep saying that, it's a lot. And I think that I keep saying it because I want you to understand that you you can have a meltdown whenever you feel like it. You can cry whenever you feel like it. You can um do whatever the fuck you want when you feel like it because this is painful. It is painful. And so do what's best for you. So grief really messes with the brain. And I was mentally ill before. I told you guys growing up. I know now that I had mental illness, but after my grandfather passed away, and then my dad passed away, I it's and then like I said, combined with the mental illness, my brain was foggy. Like I was useless after each loss. I couldn't function. Um, yeah. And so this is not my term, but on here, on the Google Facts, it's what is grief brain. And it says that grief brain it occurs as a result of a traumatic loss or complicated grief, and some people are so involved in the grieving process or the loss or the grief, whichever one, and your brain is foggy. It's sort of like how I live with mental illness and ADHD. You can't remember stuff, and then your brain can't process it properly. So you can't go through their bullshit 7 stages, and you can't go through your personal 7 stages because your brain isn't processing the loss. And if it's not processing the loss, it's not helping you to move through, And so that will contribute to anger because you're mad that you can't function no more. It'll, if you're not processing, you could be sitting home overeating, having too much snack. You can just, stop talking to people, build a wall around yourself. And so processing it is a major part of the grief, you know. And like I said, I don't believe in a time period but I do believe that we learn to move on and not move on without our person, move on handling that they're not here anymore and having the ability to have good memory, remember them in a different light. Because I know, like, when you're initially losing the person, you initially lost the person, you feel emptiness, and then when you process it, you still feel the emptiness, but you're still, along with the emptiness, you're feeling the fulfillment part. And that's my word, because you'll start to remember the good times. You'll start to remember how big a part that person was, a part of your life, and what they did to change your life. And coupled with that, it'll help you balance it a little bit better than before. So, no right or wrong way. And your process is your process. And the only thing that I am adamant about is finding someone to talk to, writing it down. If you don't want professional help, then your friends and family, of course, are not your therapist. But if there's somebody that, like a confidant in your life, and you don't have to tell them everything, you can just say, listen, I'm having a hard time dealing with this loss. And, please just watch me or be there for me, come pick me up for a cup of coffee. So it's stuff like that. And so for the last part of this quote, I'm going to deal with the peanut gallery. And I cannot, and probably throughout the series, I'm going to list it. Probably at the next episode, I'm going to list some of the dumb shit that people have said to me. But for this episode, I'm going to tell you what and what not to say about grieving to someone that is grieving, someone that is experiencing the loss of their person, place, or thing. Because people are assholes. One of my pet peeves, and then I'll read the list to you, is, especially on social media, someone will post that there was a loss. They're guaranteed there's going to be someone that says, what happened? How did they pass? Martha, we're on social fucking media. That's none of your business. You don't know me. You know what I'm saying? You didn't know Bismarcky, like what happened, give people, and I'm not talking about on a general page. I'm talking about if I post that someone passed away, someone is going to come under my post and say, not even sorry for your loss first. They're going to say, what happened? Martha? What? Hello? Are you sorry for my loss, or you just want to fucking have something to be nosy about? But I digress. Because, listen, it could get rough. And you may have to slap a few people. And listen, go ahead and slap them. So, because I'm just nosy as the next person. And if somebody does pass away and their family or friends post it, I am curious if they don't, say, I am curious, well, how did that person, especially lately, like, was my age, 55, 56. I think, that's not my first, that's not what I would say to the person that is dealing with the loss. I'm going to say, I'm so sorry for your loss. You and your family have my condolences, and that's it. So here's some things that are on this Google list that you should not say to people. You must be relieved that they aren't suffering anymore. Boy, oh boy, does that fucking drive me crazy. Oh, relieved? No, not relieved. At least you, or at least she. What? So I'm going to tell you what they say. I'm going to pull up the list closer. I'm going to tell you what they say. Instead of saying you must be relieved that he isn't suffering anymore or he didn't suffer, you say, I am so sorry how hard it's been over the last year and how sudden the death was. I'm here for you. That's it. That's it. And you know something? And this is me. And I had to reprimand myself because I'm always the person that says, let me know if you need anything. And they're saying that that's wrong. It's crying. I'm saying, what do you mean? I didn't mean to hurt people's feelings, but it says, instead of saying, let me know if you need anything, say, I would like to offer you concrete help. The example they gave is your son's birthday is coming up. I can help you plan, since this is so sudden and you're going through it. I can cook for you, and bring you something to eat if you don't feel like cooking. Like those are the type of things that they're saying. Just don't say, let me know. If you need anything, give them the concrete help that you would like to offer. Yeah, it just, this one. It's been a long time. Why are you still looking at that picture? Why are you still talking about the accident? So they're saying, I know how much you miss him. We're always thinking of that person. I love that picture that you posted. You can see the love between you two. Or I found, and I like this happens to me a lot because I have pictures everywhere. And so when memories pop up, I will find pictures of the person that passed and I will share them, because that may be a picture that the sister or the girlfriend or whoever didn't have. And it brings a smile to their face to have that picture, you know? So just don't make it your personal mission to tell people what to do. I think the right way to say something. Listen, we got Google and we got AI. AI will literally fucking type out the conversation for you. You know what I'm saying? So make sure you don't say some dumb shit. Because one of the things that can happen is you're going to say the wrong thing to someone that's extremely close to you. And that is going to cause a rift between you two that will never heal. Because in that person's time of absolute need, you decided to say some dumb shit and tell them you're talking about it too much. You're grieving too long. You can't keep doing this. That's dumb shit. And they will never forgive you for it. They may forget. Now, I mean, they may forget, keep going around you, but they're not going to forget what you did or said. So, just acknowledge it and let them know that, you have their sympathy, you have their love, you have their support. Listen, don't try to be a positive Patty. you know, you just, I understand how difficult this is for you. If you want to talk, let me know. That's it. You have to be patient with people. You have to let them go through their process. You can't judge them because of the way they're processing it. That's none of your business. And so, stop, people. Stop. I think there's somebody on TikTok that says that. Stop it, people. Because it's not cute. It's not cute. From the time the person loses their person, you as a friend, as a family member, as a loved one, as part of their circle, are the strength that they need to hold up. They need you to be their strength because you're a part of their world, So be good, Do you need help planning the service? Do you need me to make anything for the service? That's me. I'm always going to ask, do you need me to make something for the repass? My sister is the graphic designer. And so She will, if it's somebody close to her, do you need to, make the obituary? Do you need me to make a slideshow? Those are the things that you are going to offer your family, friend, loved one at the time when they're at the time of their loss. Because doing one of those things takes the pressure and the responsibility off of that person. And they can work on, I'm not even going to say processing grief, make it through the activities, the funeral, the repast, the burial, the onslaught of people visiting and calling and texting. You're taking that away from them. And that's a wonderful thing because you're taking, something, you're giving them something less to think about, you know, instead of them worrying about everything and everyone around them. It gives them time to take care of themselves or, if they have kids, younger kids, if you're helping them with food and, preparation and different things, they have more time to be with their babies and explain because the babies are going through the loss too. They just don't understand it. So you're giving that parent more time to be with their babies and that they can all process together and they can love on each other. So, say that, but just don't say dumb shit. You know, be kind, be patient, be loving, be supportive. Just don't say they're out of pain now. What? We know, Susie, that they're out of pain, but I'm in pain because they're not here anymore. Yes, we do. If our loved ones are sick for a short sickness, long sickness, whatever, we are internally grateful that they are not suffering anymore. I just want to say that out loud. Yes, we are so happy that their pain has ended because these illnesses, cancer, you know, um, the different neurological diseases, heart disease, the people that are going through these events and living with these illnesses, it's extremely painful. I fucking hate cancer. Okay. And I know everybody hates cancer, but cancer was just something that happened to people. Like I understood that people around me and all my life, I know people that have had cancer and they've had to go through the process and some of them are still here and some of them aren't. But it wasn't until my sister got cancer that I was on the front lines, and I saw the beginning and I saw the in between. And I know that I am extremely happy because she was the most amazing person in the world. So I know where she was going. You know what I'm saying? Um, but she's not here with me. My brother, my oldest brother, was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago, and I was on the front line for that process. And that's what enlightened me to what people are going through living with this illness because, I went with him chemo. And so I'm in chemo with him, but I'm also watching the people around him. I learned how severe somebody's cancer was by the amount of treatments they were getting, their little bags, the fluid bags, I learned that, having a port put in for some illnesses is extremely painful. So don't say that to people. Oh, I know you're happy that they're out of pain. Yes, I am. But I'm in pain. So could you please just be happy for the person who's not in pain and be sad because I'm in pain and I don't need to hear your bullshit. Okay? And if somebody says something out of pocket, you have every right to just punch the shit out of them or throw them out or tell them that what they said is wrong and don't say that shit to nobody no more. You have my permission. You need to say the F word. So, grief is complicated and simple at the same time. Like I said, you're never going to see that person again. You're never going to see that thing again. You're never going to have that feeling again. And those things can show up and they last forever, but they show up. They can show up at good times, bad times, out of the fucking way times, and it'll knock you on your ass. It will. And you just have to share and understand that it's a process and your process isn't wrong and your reaction isn't wrong. And it's just like I say with mental illness and like the different mental illnesses, there nobody knows how you're living with handling the illness. You know what I'm saying? Your feelings are valid regardless. So don't be ashamed. And I'm telling other people, don't be judgmental and don't tell people what the fuck to do. Let them process. You know? Can you cuss grief out? You know, I had to take a pause because I was getting ready to cry again. Um, but like I said before, there can be times when you'll be somewhere just having a celebration and enjoying yourself, and a smell or something will remind you of your person, and it's like a punch that knocks the wind out of you all of a sudden, and you'll be in tears. You'll be a hot mess, and you'll have to say, me, grief, sir. We are at a whole fucking party. Where'd you come from? you know, why did you go sit your funky ass down somewhere? I'm trying to have a good time, you know, and that's how it is. I just know that I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, and I'm going to give you the cussing way through it. But that's how you have to handle it, if that's your way. I always say that I have 6 or 7 personalities. I'll tell one of the personalities to handle grief that day, you know. But I'm saying this to you seriously and out of love, that the process it's brutal. It really is brutal. And there's no way that I can tell you that it's not going to be brutal, you know. I will tell you this quickly because I want the emptiness part is something that I will share later, but I never got over emptiness. I still have emptiness, and one of my kids is down the street, but they're not in the house with me. Understand? My youngest is on the West Coast. I won't get over that. It doesn't matter that she's grown and she's, doing her thing. She's not here with me, and I'm not the complete mom, the identity mom. I'm not that anymore. So, there's no right or wrong way. I guess that's what I'm saying. So, remember, what you're going through is natural, and there are people out there that can help you, and there are organizations out there that can help you. There are books that can help you, and reach out to someone. So I hope that you guys share this with someone that may be struggling with this, with grief. Let them know that you're there for them. That's it. And what can I do to assist you, relieve you? Okay? And if you need permission to curse somebody out, you can ask me to, curse them out or something. But just protect your space. Don't allow people that are toxic to come in and make it worse. Okay? But I thank you guys for listening. I hope that you tune into the rest of the series. I know that we all have someone that can relate to this, so I would love for you to share this episode with them and also tell them to tune in for the I don't know how many episodes are going to be in this series yet, but I'm going to do a couple and, give them the information so they can tune in and listen. Share, period. I would be honored. I would be so excited if you shared the episode, and I would be just completely out of my mind if you left a comment, on one of the links, or on my website. I would be, it just makes me feel so good, So if it's for nothing else to make me smile, leave a comment, you know? Let me know how you think it's going. There's no right or wrong answer. I love you all. And anything that you share with me is an honor. And anytime you ask me for help, anytime that you tell me what I'm doing to help you or other people, that is an honor. You hear me getting ready to cry again, but it is an honor. And so don't be afraid to leave me a comment. Don't be afraid to message me, send me an email, because everything that someone does to let me know that they are out there and I'm helping them, it makes my depression much better. It pisses the monster off. I should say that. So whatever way you choose to interact with me, I'm here. You're a superhero. Don't let anybody else tell you that it's different. Okay? Stay safe. Stay peaceful. Welcome to Breaking the Mask of Depression with me, your host, the Diva with Depression. How are you guys doing today? How are you really doing? I always have to ask that question. That's the question that we really should be asking everybody. Not just how are you doing, but how are you really doing? Because you want to know how they're really doing. And if I want to be honest, I'm not doing all that well. So that's why I always ask, how are you guys really doing? Because, when you're like me and others, when you find it hard to get up every single day and find a will to live and find hope, when you have all of this bullshit going on around you, it's kind of hard to find a reason to hang on. Every single day is something different. Not even every single day, every fucking hour it's something different. And so it's kind of hard to find hope. It's hard to find the will, and you guys know that I'm not one to sort of sugarcoat and, give you guys the little cliche and rainbows bullshit. I know how hard it is to live in the darkness and find slivers of light. So I don't know if it's advice to you, but all I can say is don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about next week. Just try to find a reason to hang on today. Try to find a reason to hang on to the next moment. The other day I was feeling down and I found out that my oldest baby became a nurse. I'm so excited to share that with the world, and I was so excited, and I said, okay, that was a reason for me to hang on to today. And then the next day, I just said, well, let me find a reason for today. And that's what we have to do. We just have to find a reason every hour, every minute, to find a reason to hang on, because it's a struggle. And guys, you know that I know that. And I know a lot of people don't understand how our minds operate and how we feel. And it hurts, that the people that love us the most don't really understand how we feel and how our brains operate. But we know how we feel. And I don't know, sometimes I guess that's a good thing, that at least we know that there are others out there that understand how we feel. So you're not by yourself. I'm here, and I know what you're going through. So hang on to me, and we are going to find a moment, an hour, or a day. We're going to find a reason to hang on to each other and to push through. Okay? Okay. So, I hope that you guys got a chance to listen to the grief episode, What is Grief Part 1. And if you didn't, go back and listen to it. It's on all the listening platforms. And in that episode, I sort of talked about, well, number one, that I'm trying to get, have a little series, because I was explaining that myself and a lot of people around me in my circle and in my world have been struggling with a lot of grief in the past year, a lot of losses, physical losses, and everybody is trying to, cope with it. And we all deal with grief differently, but we don't talk about it enough, especially in the Black community. We say a prayer and they're, out of pain and, they're with God, or, all the little sayings, but that's not enough, and so I decided that I was going to do this little series, and nothing in any kind of order, but just, connecting the dots on the different types of grief. And so in the first episode, I discussed what grief was and the different types of grief, and, how some of the symptoms of grief and, what they say are the stages that we're supposed to go through, and some of the ways that we can deal with the loss of people, people, loved ones, pets, physical losses, I call them. Don't quote me on that. I don't want to get in trouble, but the physical losses, that's not the only thing that we lose. Those are not the only things that we grieve. We grieve lots of losses. We grieve anything that we lose that is important to us. And so that's what hit me when I was writing the first episode. I said, okay, well, I'm going to have to break this down, because we have to talk about all the losses that we can experience that we will be grieving. So for this episode, I wanted to talk about those losses. I want to talk about the losses of, I was trying to think of the word, but experiences. The loss of things that you can't touch, but you feel. How does that sound? The loss of things that you can't touch, but you feel. And so some examples of that would be the first episode, and I think I touched on this a couple of times throughout many, many different episodes that I have had throughout the podcast journey, because I talk about the loss of my sister several times. But when I lost my sister, I also went through the empty nest stage with my kids, because they both were leaving home at the same time. And so much of my identity was mom. I was the mom, the PTA, the, carpooler, the Girl Scout mom, the Girl Scout leader mom, the soccer mom, you name it, I was the mom. And so my whole identity was mom. And so now, what the hell was I going to do? I had been mommy all this time. And so now, who was I? And so I was grieving the loss of being mom, that mom, So now I had to find the new mom, the new level mom. I think in like the video games, you're at level 12 or something. So I was at a different level of mom. And that was a loss, That was a major loss because, number one, they weren't going to be in the house with me anymore. And that was scary because, in addition to not being in the house, with me, my kids not being with me, it also was a trauma trigger that I was going to be living alone. And also, who am I going to cook dinner for? Who am I going to drive to? Who am I going to go to the store with? Who am I going to? All these things, it's just a whole big mess. I had to, that was something that I was going to have to grieve. I was going to have to grieve the emptiness, the empty nest experience, and find a way to become me. And let's be honest, I'm going to be honest, I haven't done it yet. I still haven't done it. So, there's that. Then you could be going through a divorce or a separation, which I did that also, but that's a whole nother show, Oprah show. The death of a spouse or an ex, a breakup. If when we left the first time that I got separated and moved to another state, there was a big adjustment because I had to be the head of the household. I had to take out the garbage. That was my first big thing, right? Like, who the hell's gonna take out the garbage? What? And I moved from the south. I moved from the south back north, and there was when the first big snow came, I'm like, well, who's gonna shovel all this snow? And it was like, I have to shovel the snow, but you have to start to, get used to the fact that life is different. You have to start to grieve the loss of a commitment. You have to grieve the loss of a couple. You have to grieve the loss of shared experiences. You have to find a way to not feel like a failure. That is a big thing, not feeling like a failure. I don't think I've gotten there yet, and it's been many, many years. You always feel like there's something that you could have done to save a relationship. But, those are different things that you have to grieve when it comes to a divorce, a separation, a breakup. What's something else? A chronic illness. You have to, that comes with grief. If you have an illness that is going to change your way of living physically. We may have to walk with assistance, or maybe you have an illness that you have to take medication every single day, certain times a day, or you need a breathing apparatus that you have to carry with you. That's something that is going to change your way of living. Fertility, maybe you have to do IVF, so your dream of getting pregnant naturally is put on the back burner, and you have to do it go through the in vitro process. You have to grieve the natural way of getting pregnant. You have to grieve that, but we don't think about those things. We don't really think about that. That is a point there. We don't think about it as grief, but it is grief because that is a major loss. Having a disabled child. Because if you think about it, when you have a disabled child, there are things that you're just not going to be able to do because you're always going to be a caretaker. You're always going to be a caretaker. You're not going to be able to, go to all the places that you may go to with your other children. Your child that is living with a disability may not be able to participate in everything. And so you have to grieve the fact that your child might not play football, soccer, baseball, volleyball, do different things like that. You may have to grieve the fact that you won't get to take that child to Disney World. To some people it may sound minor, but it is a big thing, because you had dreams of having a child and going through all of the motions, and having all these milestones, and those are all put to bed, so to speak, because your child, you don't have the ability to do those things with your child. So that's grieving. Loss of a pet. Now listen, I have a grand doggy, and we have had Louis since he was a little peanut, and yes, he was the size of a little peanut, just about. And so if ever there was a time when we don't have Louis, oh my goodness, I don't know what we're going to do. Pets are a part of the family. You hear me? I mean, what do we do? When I was younger, and I would go to my grandparents' house every summer, every school holiday, if I could, I'd be in Virginia, and we had a dog named Bob. I know the dog named Bob. Who comes up with these things? But Bob was my ace, okay? And Bob and I did everything together. And if Bob wasn't feeling good, I was right there next to Bob, making sure that, look, we got to get Bob feeling better. And Bob followed me everywhere. Bob made sure that I was okay. Bob went ahead of me when I went out to pick the tomatoes and stuff, to make sure that there were no snakes or anything. I mean, pets are our friends, okay? They are our family members, and there is nothing in this world that the majority of us would not do without for our pets. So that is definitely grief. The loss of a first love. Oh boy. Yeah, that's a whole nother Oprah show too. But that's a loss. Celebrities. Listen, when Prince took his last breath, my phone was ringing off the hook, okay? Because everybody that knows me knows that I bleed purple. That man, we have to have a moment of silence right now, because that man, the same thing with Gerald Levert, Isaac Hayes. Listen, look, I'm getting choked up now just talking about it. Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Aretha Franklin. These people were just a deep, deep part of our childhood. You hear what I'm saying? In my video, there's a video that I have on my Insta and on my TikTok talking about, the death of our childhood, like childhood losses. Heavy D and Biz Markie, Howie T, and it's just Black Rob, Craig Mack. These are people that are supposed to live forever, No, even though nobody lives forever, but this is our childhood. Frankie Beverly is just supposed to live forever. You know what I'm saying? Good Lord. God. Okay. But anyway, you get what I'm saying? The loss of a job. Now, the loss of a job, loss means loss of income. It means the loss of stability, the loss of independence. But when you retire, that's a loss of stability, a loss of routine. You don't have anything to do every single day. That's why you see when somebody retires, usually they go out and they get something else, like a part-time job or something like that, because they just don't like sitting at home, you know? So we have to look at it. The correct term for it is secondary grief, which, I don't know. I guess that's the technical term for it, but I like mine better. It's a loss that you can't touch, but you can feel. It sounds better than secondary. I don't like that. But there's a diagram that, I'll post this on the Instagram page because I like the way they set this up. But the loss of a support system, the loss of financial security, the loss of faith, and that's a good one, the loss of faith, the loss of income, loss of identity, the loss of dreams for the future, which is what I was explaining with a disabled child, the fertility, loss of confidence. And we don't think about that with if you lost a job, it does affect your confidence. It affects how you feel about yourself, because if you can't earn and take care of yourself, you can't take care of your family, then that sort of affects how you feel about yourself. So I think I get that part. Loss of faith. The disabled child part, the fertility part, you sort of feel like the higher power didn't do enough to ensure that you had a healthy baby. I can get that part. I can get that. Loss of identity, which is what I was explaining to you with the empty nest syndrome. What do you do after, being a mom for 21 years? The same thing with the divorce and the separation and the breakup, friendship. What do you do now when you're all alone? How do you take the next step to be just you? Who are you? People don't think about the fact that when you have best friends, say it's just you and your best friend, and you're inseparable from childhood on up, and then you separate. Who are you without that best friend? And how do you make new friends? It's so hard to make new friends. And so these are things that we shouldn't ignore. We shouldn't trivialize them, because they're important. They're very, very important, especially when it comes to our identity, because identity is important because it contributes to our mental health. You know what I mean? Because that your self-esteem, your confidence, all of that goes into your happiness and how you feel. Because how you feel about yourself is important. And if you don't feel that you are worthy, if you don't feel like you matter, then you're not going to do what it takes to get better, if that makes sense. And so we have to stop overlooking things and saying, oh, that's not important. It is important. When you see people, let's just take someone that retires at 67. They retire and they're home and they're just sitting there watching The Price is Right. and every day they get up and they have their coffee and their bagel, and then they just sit there and they watch The Price is Right, and they watch the this and they watch the that, and then every day, but you don't see that they're not happy. They're just going through a spiral, a routine. They need to get out, or find something to do, even if it's, something to do on the computer or some type of hobby. Get out, walk. Those are the people that you have to watch out for. If you see your loved ones going in that direction, then hey, let's go for a walk, or, you want to go to the store, or you want to do this, you want to do that, because those are the people that'll get in a rut and it'll be hard to get out of. That's just not something that you overlook and be like, oh, haha, he just likes watching The Price is Right. Well, he may like The Price is Right, but he may also like to go outside for a little while, go to the store. Just because we're introverts doesn't mean that we don't like to go out every once in a while or don't like to be asked to go out every once in a while. So, you have to know the signs. You have to know what to pay attention to, because grief can very easily slip into the danger zone. Grief can very easily turn into a major depressive episode. The sadness from a loss can turn into the brain fog and the decreased energy and the changes in appetite and the feelings of guilt. And, with grief, for example, you'll see, the person will still enjoy activities from time to time, and then all of a sudden they'll lose interest in it. That's from grief, then that's just going from grief to depression. And so then that's what you have to watch for. Sadness linked to the loss turns into sadness and hopelessness and worthless thinking. That's depression, from grief to depression. And so that's what we have to watch for. And so stop being afraid to talk about stuff. These are not curse words. Black people really think that everything is a curse word. Everything has to be a secret, and it's not. We have to start learning the right terms for things, and we have to start having these conversations. Grief can come and go. It can come at any time. And there's no set time. The other day, I just started bawling. And it was because of something that happened on TV. But whatever happened on TV triggered a memory of something, and I just started crying. It doesn't matter. It can come and go. And it could affect you in any kind of way. And there's no right way to grieve. Everybody grieves differently. I was telling someone the other day, like, men and women, but a lot of men have grief sex. Like that's their way of grieving. And it was the wildest thing when I finally read about it. It was the wildest thing, but that's their way of grieving. And it's a thing. But you wouldn't think about that. You wouldn't think that that is what's happening in the moment. But it's a thing. But because we keep these things to ourselves, we don't know that that's a thing. So let's talk about it. You could be a devout Christian and change churches, or your pastor leaves and a new pastor comes in, or you change, maybe you change religions. You're grieving the loss of the old pastor to the new pastor. You're grieving the old church to the new church. You're grieving the old religion to the new religion. This is grief. Any loss that affects you deeply is grief. And it doesn't matter if it's a person, place, or thing. It's a loss. And it's anything. Or a milestone, a new house may trigger grief because that person is not there to share the new house with you. You know? Oh, it's just different things, guys. It's different things. And there's just no set way to deal with it. And you just have to be aware of the different types of grief and that they're out there, and that your feelings, whatever they are valid, and however you choose to grieve is perfectly normal and perfectly fine. And it's okay. It's absolutely okay. So, it's okay. I just have to keep saying that because I want you to know that there's nothing abnormal about how you feel and how you go about it. You know, a birthday is going to come up for someone that you lost, and maybe the first birthday after they're gone is going to be really hard for you. And the birthday after that, you'll be able to cry and smile. And then maybe it'll get a little bit easier after that. Or maybe it won't. Either way, that's your way of handling it. But you'll find a way to overcome the hurdles. And I cannot lie and say that everything is going to get easier. If you're mourning the loss of a job, and you haven't found a new job, then maybe find a way to volunteer. Find a way to leave the house. Maybe go to the library and job search while you're in the library. Or, volunteer at somewhere in the neighborhood. But don't stay in the house. Try to get out. If you're, struggling with your disabled child, look around the community and see if there are some organizations that will be able to help you find resources for you and your child. Because I can guarantee you that whatever situation you are in, you're not the only one. And that's what we have to remember. You're never the only one. Never, ever. I can guarantee you. Even when they say 1 in a million, there's 2 in a million. And that number 2 might be living right next door. You're never alone. Never. So there's a community somewhere around you. And if they're not next door to you, there's a virtual community waiting to embrace you. So just don't sit alone with your grief. There's somebody there waiting to help you. So guys, please, don't be quiet about what you're going through. There are support groups online. I know that I mentioned Grief Share. That is one of the bigger organizations out there. And I know that they have online support groups, and they have local ones also. You can go to their website, Grief Share, and see if they have in-person support groups in your area. And I know that grief is a very, 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 very common subject that many of us don't talk about enough. So please share this with your circle and your community so you can help someone work through their loss. Please, so they can work through it safely and healthy. Okay? Share, share, share. I thank you guys for listening and supporting. If you feel the wind blow you, please leave a review on one of the listening pages. I would love to hear from you. If you have any suggestions on a subject that you would like for me to explore, please do. Please, please protect yourself, protect your family, and protect your peace. I will talk to you guys soon. Okay? Be well. Bye.
So